Hello everyone, welcome, and thanks for the reminder. My name is Fulvio Casali. I'm not Calvin. I'm taking his place because I actually assisted and helped and taught some of the trainings in the past few days, in particular the one that we're going to talk about now, so might as well just do it again. I should plug in here. And all presenters were asked to put the slide that Christy showed you at the very end, and I forgot, so I'm doing it at the beginning. Please after this presentation, please go to ploneconf.sixfeetup.com to give your feedback. So again, my name is Fulvio Casali, and I have been a Plone developer for 8 years from Seattle, Washington, and I'm here to talk about dexterity, creating content types for Plone through the web, as a follow-on to Chris's talks, theming through the web. And this, I just want to give a bit of a shout out to this effort that has been in progress for the last couple of years, where we finally got to the point where we have excellent documentation for Plone, which has been sorely missing for years, and at the same time also trainings. Philip Bauer and his colleagues started writing and offering a training curriculum for Plone in Germany, and basically publishing it as open source for anybody to use, and that has led to a complement to our documentation for people to use and to learn about Plone. And at last year in Bucharest, I also gave one of these trainings, and this effort has been really taking off, and so a lot of people have been contributing and improving this documentation, and it's now getting really good. And one thing that we've heard was, okay, great, now we have documentation, but it would be great to have video also, video trainings. And so this is what this talk is, because it's being recorded, and so it's sort of like a condensed version of what we did in the past 2 days of some of the topics that we covered in the past few days. And so hopefully we're going to start building a library of video trainings, and no doubt they will be replaced and improved, but this is just the first shot. And so down at the bottom right, this cycle of trainings is about through the web, and in particular we're talking about dexterity and creating content types. So what do we mean by content types? And because this is being recorded and anybody could be watching it, I'm going to give an analogy that a lot of people are probably familiar with working with other content management systems or other web frameworks. And that is, the relational database type of idea, where if you think of a table in a relational database, you have a bunch of columns, and each row in the table is a record that has different values in each of the columns, and the number and the types of columns in this table is the schema for the table, and that is sort of what we mean by content types in Plone. It's we're thinking of a particular unit of content that has certain fields that have certain attributes, and all of the content items in our website that were created with this schema have the same fields. I should say also that Plone does not use a relational database in the back end, so this is just an analogy. It's not actually how it works behind the scenes, but I think it's a good analogy. So for definitions, the schema is, as I mentioned, is sort of the set of columns in our table. In other words, what the fields are that we want for our objects. However, that's not all, because we also want a few other bits of metadata that describe our content type. And that is what we call, in Plone, we call the factory type information, the FTI, which includes things like the name, the icon that we'll see when we create or when we look for data content items in our website, and also what views are available for this particular content type. So what is a view? A view is the representation of this object, and it can be visual, it can be a JSON data structure, it can be an XML serialization of that data. It's just how you, depending on how you're going to use it, you can have different views. There's also a view and an edit view, for example. When you have the permission to actually change this data element, you can go in and edit it, and then you see the field widgets. Now, in Plone, the content type framework that we use is called Dexterity. But this is like the latest iteration of content type frameworks. In past versions of Plone, we used something called archetypes, and it's now being replaced by Dexterity. It's obviously, we thought, the community thought that it needed to be improved, so it got replaced with Dexterity. The main difference and the whole point of this presentation is that, or one important difference is that in Dexterity you can actually define content types through your web browser. You don't have to write Python code before you can actually use your content types. And there are other differences that happen under the cover that I'm not going to go into. So when you are logged into a Plone site, the first place, the most common, the most frequent place where you run into content types is the Add New menu. Here are all of the content types that come out of the box with a brand new Plone site. So the most common one that you're going to use is the page. The home page is an example of a page content type. There are others, like a news item, an event that has start and end dates, participants, location, and other information that is useful to have for an event. A folder, which is just a content for a container for other content types, and so on. But we are actually interested in defining something new, something that's not on here yet. And if you've seen Eric's keynote earlier, he actually went through the same exercise that I'm going through now. He created a recipe content type. I'm going to create something else. I'm going to create so basically the assumption here, the premise is that this website is is the website for a conference, and a lot of the content in this website is going to be pages about talks, about presentations. So I'm going to create a content type called talk. And I find the control panel for creating and viewing and editing content types in the dexterity content type control panel. And here you see the default types already. So you can actually already just go in here and change the default content types, which I actually do with for my clients a lot of times. I go in and add some fields that they want for pages or for news items or for whatnot. But here now I'm actually going to create a new one. So this is going to be called Talk. And I've created it. And now I'm going to give it some fields. So I go to the Fields tab. And we can see that it already has a couple of fields that come sort of out of the box from what we call behaviors. We can also remove them if we want to, but for now we're just going to not worry about those and add a new one. So I'm going to call this field the presenter. And fields have, just like columns in a database table have a type. So here are choices for all of the types that we can use right out of the box. In this case, it's just going to be a string, so it's a text line. And let's make it required, because every presentation will need at least a presenter. And there it is. Now I can go into the settings link and change some of the attributes of this field. For example, I can make it not required if I want. I can give it a minimum or a maximum length. And these attributes depend on the type of field that you're going to be using. Let's add another field. Let's say type of presentation. And this one is going to be a choice. So it's basically a pick list where now I have to go into the settings because right now it has no values. So I'm going to give it some values. So it could be a keynote, or it could be a training, or it could be a talk. And now already you see here the values, the allowed values that I gave it. So already we can use this. Go back to the home page, go to the Add New menu, and there is our new type. And if I create a new one, I see the title and the summary. As we've seen, those were already there. And here is the presenter, which is required, as denoted by the red dot, and the type of presentation. And because it's required, you know, if I move the mouse out of it, it's telling me, hey, you forgot to put something in there. So let's actually, I'm going to put my name in here. And I'm going to say this is a talk. Save it. Oh, of course, I forgot the title. Save it. Should always give it a summary for searchability. It's very important. But I am cheating right now. So, and here it is. And I can also see it in the contents of my website. No? Oh. There. There it is. And it inherits all of the functionality that other content types have. For example, I can publish it, either through this menu, state, or through the states menu that's in the toolbar. I could do that as well. I'm just going to do it through here. And there we go. So I created a content type, and I created my first item of the talk content type. Before I go, I just want to mention a couple of other things. So Dexterity allows you to do this through the web, through a browser, but you don't have to. You can do everything through code in an add-on that you create, that you instantiate with Mr. Bob, and then you put it in your GitHub repository and all that, all those common development practices. But you can also move back and forth between through the web and through code. So, for example, I can, and this, so actually, I could, for example, right now I'm working on localhost on this machine, but I could just now move this type to a production website by saying, I check the box here, and then I say export type profiles. And this is basically the FTI definition that I mentioned earlier. It gives me a zip file that I downloaded on my local hard disk. And now, actually, let me do this. So,
I'm curious as to see the contents of it.
All right, let's look at it. So now I've unzipped it. And actually, I'm just going to drag this into my text editor. I'm not going to do it. Okay, well, let's do it. All right. So here, at the root of this zip file, there is a this is a generic setup profile import step, XML file definition. And in the folder that has the name of the content type, there is the FTI XML definition. And it also contains the entire XML schema definition that is now encoded, so it looks really ugly, but it's there. And if I go back to, let's say now I'm creating a new site. Now this is a brand new site I just created. There are no talks, but I can go to the Dexterity control panel and click the import type profiles. Browse to the file, where am I? Browse to the zip file that I just downloaded from the other site. And there's my talk. And there it is. I can create it. I think that's all the time I have. And I did not forget. So please go to submit your feedback at ploneconf.6fitup.com. And thank you for coming. And do you have any questions?
What's the difference between those two export options?
Oh, there were two export options. Okay, so we exported the type profile. The schema model, I'll show you what it is by going here. That's what that is. That button would give you this XML file. And this is the schema description. See, it has the presenter, which is a text line. It has the type of presentation, which is a choice, and there are the choices. So that's the entire schema definition of my content type.
So what's the use case for that versus editing?
The use case for this is that I can actually go in here and change it, and I can. This is an editor. This is a text editor. I can make changes to. I can say required true, for example. Save it, and this change is immediately applied to the content type on my website. But I can also download it from here, from the main dexterity control panel here. I can export it, and let's do it. And
Are there like model options that aren't available via the GUI? Like,
Yes.
Do you find yourself going to that sometimes because it's the only way to do it?
yes, I do. For example, one thing that you can't do, there are many things you can't do through the browser. So you will hit a ceiling pretty quickly. But one example is some fields you want them to be available only to site administrators and not to editors. And so those permissions you cannot do through the browser. You have to actually, but you can do them just by editing the XML schema. Yes?
A question, can you easily add an icon for that new desktop type?
That is unfortunately not yet. So you've noticed add new. Everything has an icon, the talk does not. Sorry. Yeah. Although,
In the XML and
maybe, I haven't tried it. It's possible.
Can you have behavior for content type?
Yes, behavior is a whole other topic, but yes. Yes. That's, in fact, that's one of the main use cases. There is this tab, behaviors. So there we looked at the fields. We added some fields. And there's this other tab, behaviors, that has a lot of behaviors that are really, really useful and important. In fact, most of the time that's what I do. I don't actually add fields. I just turn on and off behaviors for content types because it just gives me a whole lot of things at once that I don't have to, nothing else to do.
Fulvio?
Yeah.
If you take out an existing content type like events, and if you add something, it's like an upload field, because I tried this, an upload field, and then you create a new event, as I remember, that new field doesn't show up. Am I wrong?
It should show up. It should show up. It may be that it ended up in a different field set. So for example, here these are field sets that we get just from behaviors by default, and we can turn off. And sometimes people create field sets by mistake instead of fields, and then they add, so.
Okay. When you're done, could I come up and
Sure.
try it?
Sure. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.